Hey, this episode is brought to you by Bridger Brewing and their Three Forks location, where you can still catch a performance from Sawyer Brown, as well as a Cars, Cornhole, and Cheers event. Visit bridgerbrewing.com/events to purchase tickets. Just left my head all of a sudden. You good? All right. We're going to talk coasters. Charles Wolf Drimal is a director of conservation of the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, our neighbor here on South Wallace. He played a significant role in developing and promoting the Representative Ryan Zinke's GYREAT Act. GYREAT?
Great.
All right,
Great. Just call it what it is.
All right,
great.
If passed, it would add nearly 100 miles of Madison and Gallatin County rivers and streams to the National Wild and Scenic System. Thank you for being here, Charles.
Welcome, Charles.
Happy to be here.
So this is a big deal. This bill is a huge deal. Talk about the significance of the legislation.
We have been working on this legislation for 15 years.
Wow.
And it's not just this specific legislation, but it's the concept of bringing new wild and scenic river protections to some of the iconic streams in southwest and south central Montana. So Greater Yellowstone Coalition is a part of a broader coalition called Montans for Healthy Rivers. We're made up of groups like American Rivers, American Whitewater, GYC, Gallatin River Task Force, and then lots of landowners, businesses in the region, county commissions, watersheds. We all have this common interest of protecting some of our iconic streams in the region. And using the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act requires an act of Congress. And so it takes a lot of initial grassroots organizing and ground support, and then bringing that effort all the way up to the top with building a sponsor and acquiring a sponsor to commit to protecting these rivers. So we've had various iterations of bills over the years. One of them in the past was the Montana Headwaters Legacy Act, sponsored by Senator Tester, which was it covered a much broader geography. And that was also an exciting time. But one of the problems with that is that we did not have bipartisan support from the whole delegation on that legislation. And so the furthest it got was out of a committee at the end of last year.
What's the timeline? When did you start working on that?
Yeah, good question. Like I said, we've been working collectively for 15 years on wild and scenic river bills. For most of that time period, I was just looking back at our history this morning, since about 10 years of that, we have actually had legislation in Congress, which is pretty rare for a single state at a national level to have wild and scenic river bills consistently in Congress. The first one was the East Rosebud Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, which Congressman Zinke introduced in 2015. So as a congressman, he started that legislation along with Senator Tester and Senator Daines, and that bill eventually passed in 2018, signed by President Trump. While that bill was in the works, we were also working on the Gallatin and the Madison and the Yellowstone, so a lot of other rivers in the region. Mm-hmm. And it took a few years later to get the Montana Headwaters Legacy Act introduced, which was November of 2020. For every congressional session, which is every 2 years, there's been some wild and scenic rivers bill in Congress since East Rosebud. But like I said, what we call the MHLA, the Montana Headwaters Legacy Act, it never passed. And what's significant now, though, is that we have Congressman Zinke's support for this new bill, and we have, for the first time since East Rosebud, Republican support. And, you know, whether you realize this or not, like at the end of the day, conservation is very political. I feel like my job is politics, and to have, you know, we now live in a state with 4 Republican delegates. And we have a Congress that is led by a majority of Republicans in both the Senate and the House, and then the executive branch. And so to have a Republican supporting this bill in the House gives it a way better chance of passing even in a single congressional session. So that's why it's a big deal. And of course, I feel like in some ways we've come full circle because we started working with Congressman Zinke before he was brought over to the Department of Interior on a Wild and Scenic River bill, and here we are again working with him.
So great to have his support. He
is.
Representative Zinke is a staunch advocate for this. Obviously, he's presenting it, introducing it, sponsoring it. To what extent will we have the support of the rest of the Montana delegation?
I feel confident. And the reason I say that is for there's several components that contribute to this. Some of the feedback that we received from previous work on Wild and Scenic, particularly the Montana Headwaters Legacy Act, was that it was too big for Senator Daines. And so as we came as a coalition back in January to say, okay, what are we going to do differently in this new Congress? Let's make a proposal that's a lot smaller, that really hones in on the areas of the state where we have the most social support and local political support from county commissions.
Okay.
And we approached the whole delegation with a vision for a Wild and Scenic Rivers bill for Park County, Gallatin County, and Madison County. And the feedback that we've received so far was this is the right approach. This is the way to do this, and
from here on out. Like
I think so. I mean, I think that's the sentiment. Yeah, like smaller scale,
right?
Like smaller region conservation bills, not as expansive as what we had done with Senator Tester.
And when you say big, do you mean like it was filled with some pork, or do you mean it was just too vast because Montana is its own country?
Yeah, I mean, probably the latter more.
Right.
It's just that, when you talk about the regions, even from Madison County over to Carbon County, that's a lot of different communities in those counties. And some of them are really tied to outdoor recreation and tourism. Some of them are more exclusively tied to agriculture. Mm-hmm. And then in the Smith River and Tenderfoot Creek were in that bill, and people love the Smith, right? It's like one of the most coveted rivers we have in Montana, partly due to the permitting system to get on that river. And but it's also not in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And it's in counties that are more led by agriculture and mining. Yeah. And so we're dealing with just the social and political and economic issues there. So we narrowed our focus. And to return to your question, I think that it's more palatable for our whole delegation. And I also think another component of this is that I believe Congressman Zinke wouldn't have introduced the bill if he didn't think that it could pass. And so I think, he sees the opportunity to work with the rest of the delegation and get this passed. And hopefully we'll pick up a Senate sponsor soon.
How can Montanans help get this bill passed? How can we get involved? Is there something that you would suggest people do in order to pass this bill or get this bill through?
Yeah, and so keep in mind we're recording this a week after the bill introduction. So today's Thursday, no less. So today is Thursday. We had an announcement on a Wednesday, a float on a Thursday, and the bill was introduced last Friday in the House. The first thing I would just say is thank Congressman Zinke, for this, because it shows, boldness and courage to step up and do river conservation in Montana. And I'm really grateful. And I think a lot of other people in the state feel that way. That would be my first ask. But my second would be to say, this is wildly popular and it needs a companion bill on the Senate side. So call Senator Daines and Senator Sheehy's offices and let them know that this is a good thing. It's good for our outdoor recreation and tourism economy, agriculture, our way of life. And then the third component of it is I know, so I lived in Livingston for a long time. Park County has a fond place in my heart. And I know people over there really care about the Yellowstone River and its tributaries and want to see the Yellowstone included in this bill. And there's an opportunity through Congress to amend legislation and add things like that, or have a parallel bill. But again, that's Representative Downing's district.
Okay.
So the line is drawn, the district lines go between Gallatin and Park County.
Okay.
And so that maybe my third ask would be like, call
Downing.
Congressman Downing and say,
Right.
like, put the Yellowstone and
What a
the
gorgeous-
Boulder and the West Boulder and Slough Creek in the bill, because they're eligible by the Forest Service, and they are absolutely deserving of wild and scenic river protection.
Oh, yeah.
But
We're
this
on the
iteration-
Yellowstone a lot.
This iteration has 100 miles. Talk about the rivers that are affected and what the nuts and bolts are of the designation as wild and scenic.
Yeah.
What are the protections?
Yeah, great question. I'll start with the protections first. This is kind of like a wild and scenic rivers 101, like what does it do? What doesn't it do? It is known for protecting the free-flowing nature of a segment of a river. So you can't add dams, major diversions. People will say, oh, well, what's the likelihood that, the Madison is going to have another dam? There's one upstream, there's one downstream. Well, a bigger reality is the idea of just pulling water out of the system to direct it elsewhere, and that wouldn't be permitted. It also protects water quality. It's meant to either protect or enhance water quality of that river segment. And a third component is maintaining what are considered the remarkable values of that river. And it could be things like the scenery, the recreation opportunities, fish and wildlife habitat. If there's cultural heritage sites, whether they're indigenous or colonial, those are protected. And so if on public lands a project is proposed that could impact they have to go through a screening and make sure they don't, otherwise that project is prohibited. So that's a big deal. What it doesn't do or affect existing water rights, affect access through public lands. It doesn't affect existing recreation opportunities on the river. So it's kind of like meant to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, what does the river look like at this point in time? And let's just
How to keep
do
it
our
that
best
way.
to keep it that way, right?
You made me think of the Smith when you said so much of that, like the petroglyphs along there.
Totally.
And but then there's the irrigation there, that last long haul that you're getting.
Yeah.
There's the people pulling the water out of the river to irrigate, and you're like, I need all the water I can get.
And if the Smith was protected as a wild and scenic river, those irrigation and water rights aren't going away.
Exactly.
And that
That's fair.
actually gives a lot of confidence to ag producers, of course, as
Yeah.
it should. It's just keeping things as they are, and
Right.
it's like an insurance policy for the river. Right. So in the GYREAT Act, the streams that are included, as you mentioned, it's about 39 miles of the Gallatin River. So it starts at the boundary of Yellowstone National Park and then flows down to Spanish Creek. It's basically the canyon of the Gallatin River. And then still in Gallatin Canyon, Highlight Creek above the reservoir.
Yeah.
And then I want to say it's either 7 or 9 miles of that. And then over in Madison County, the Madison River from Cabin Creek, which is a little bit below Hebgen Dam, all the way down to the central part of the Madison Valley where it hits this little place called Cherry Creek Gulch. And it really goes through a bunch of different land management there. So it starts out on Forest Service. It's the Custer-Gallatin National Forest. It's an area where Quake Lake is located. So this historic earthquake that caused a landslide, that caused a pinch in the river, and this really cool feature there. And then
skate there in the wintertime.
Oh, do you? Nice. Awesome.
It's
cool.
creepy.
I've never been out there in the wintertime.
It's cool.
Other
The
than
treetops
driving
are
the
still out,
corridor.
but the water is, the ice is completely flat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And then it flows downstream off the Custer-Gallatin National Forest through some private lands, then onto the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest, and then onto a lot of BLM.
Right.
And then there's state lands in there. There's a big wildlife management area where elk winter range in the heart of that valley that's included in the corridor, and then back onto BLM lands. And then also in Madison County, there's 2 forks of Cabin Creek, which are really close to Quake Lake.
Yeah.
And that is an important area for West Slope cutthroat trout restoration and conservation.
Yeah.
And so collectively, as you said, it's 98 miles right now. And, if passed into law, it would be the largest wild and scenic rivers bill in Montana since 1976. It's a big deal, and we're really excited about it.
Is it
Thank you.
unusual? Are there other rivers that are protected like this in Montana other than inside the park?
There are 5. So the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act was passed in 1968 by Congress. And the inspiration for it, so this is a national federal law, right? the inspiration for it came right here from Montana. Back in the 50s, there was initially a dam proposed on the North Fork of the Flathead, and it would have inundated Glacier National Park. The Park Service opposed it. So the Bureau of Reclamation looked elsewhere. The next place they went was to the South Fork of the Flathead, to a place called Spruce Park Rapids. And that would have inundated this really important habitat for the remaining grizzly bears that were in that part of the ecosystem. Think back in the 50s, there were not the number of grizzly bears that we have now. And so they were really looking at populations, isolated populations, and habitat. The Craighead brothers, and you guys have an office, you share a space here in this building with the Craighead Institute. Those guys were really opposed to this. They were working for the feds at the time, and they said they were aware of the Wilderness Act that was also being crafted in Congress from the late 50s through the early 60s. And they said, this is a great concept here, but we need some other kind of policy that will protect our river corridors that aren't necessarily in higher elevation places, but down in lower river corridors, which is really important habitat for wildlife and for fisheries. So they drafted the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act right here from the inspiration in Montana. It became law in '68. It included 8 original rivers, but it didn't include any rivers in Montana. And it wasn't until 1976 that the Flathead, so the 3 forks of the Flathead, the middle, south, and north were included. And then the Missouri River breaks. So there was like 149 miles of river from Fort Benton down to the Fort Peck Reservoir that are in that. And we hadn't had a Wild and Scenic Rivers edition in Montana for over 40 years, and then came the East Rosebud bill.
Right.
And the reason for that was there was a dam proposed on the Forest Service on East Rosebud Creek, and all the locals hated the idea, including the ranchers, and they all came together to oppose it. And they said, well, what can we do to prevent this from ever happening in the future? Well, the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act will prevent that from happening in the future. GYC, American Rivers, American Whitewater, helped support local friends group for East Rosebud, and we worked with the delegation to pass that legislation.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of lobbying, and lobbyists get a bad rap. Are you, Charles, what is wrong with politics? Or can you refute that? What do lobbyists do?
I would say most of the people, if they heard or understood that conservationists like myself are flying to Washington, D.C. to lobby on behalf of, wild places, wildlife, healthy rivers, they would appreciate that. And, and I may not fall into that dirty stigma.
Yes. Understood.
But yeah, it's.
What does it mean? What does it
mean? Yeah. Okay.
What
So
do
these
you
are.
do?
Let me. Let's uncover the mystery here. In simple summary, it's finding people. This is the way that I approach it. I don't believe that conservation alone has a strong voice in Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. But certain industries do. The outdoor recreation and tourism industry does. In Montana especially. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's one of our largest. And county commissioners carry a lot of weight with their voices. I've been hearing this for 25 years living in Montana. What do the county commissioners have to say about it? The delegation really listens to them. Okay. So what I try to do as someone lobbying for conservation interests is find and work with people on the ground, landowners, business owners, county commissioners, win their support on certain issues, and then work with them to go back to DC so that they can be the spokespeople for the issues that we care about. It's really effective, and it starts from what we were talking about earlier, just grassroots organizing to grass tops organizing with local government support. We're not often lobbying for more money, although we have in the past. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, also known as LWCF, was an important financial resource for doing conservation, which our delegation supported. But most of the time, we're just trying to win issues and get their support. And in some cases, it's legislation like this Wild and Scenic Rivers Bill. In other cases, it's just weighing in on processes like, changing laws or, influencing like a forest plan outcome or something like that.
Where are you doing your lobbying? Are you doing it? Are you in the congressman's office? Are you doing it on the actual lobby? Are you doing it over steaks or a nightclub?
Yeah, good questions. Most of the above. So the majority of the roll up your sleeves and get to brass tacks conversations happen in the delegation's offices.
Okay.
And most of them, frankly, happen with their staff. But what's exciting is maybe due to our smaller population in Montana, and then also due to the reality that our delegates have historically been invested in public lands, natural resource conservation issues. We usually get FaceTime with the delegates when we're back there. And so if we meet with staff for an hour, we might get 15 minutes to half an hour with the delegate themselves, but it's still a really good opportunity to really see where they're at, where they are on an issue. In the past, I had lots of beers with Senator Tester, which was a privilege and fun to get to know him and hang out. A couple of nights ago, I had a drink with Congressman Zinke over at Stacy's and Gallatin Gateway. And so, you start to kind of pick up on their personalities more and hear what they're really interested in. And even I just want to know also what their priorities are outside of conservation, right? And where we can align our interests. Another opportunity, though, and this is great that we're talking about this right now, because for any Montanan who happens to be visiting Washington, D.C., there's something called the Montana Coffee. So maybe you guys need to fly out for this. Okay. So every Wednesday morning, the whole delegation comes together for an open coffee and donuts and conversations with the delegates and their staff, and then photos. And it's it's like 50 minutes long, and it's a great opportunity to meet with them in person, even if you're not going to have a formal conversation with them in their office. And your conversation may be 30 seconds or 90 seconds long, but you can still say, hey, I live in Bozeman or wherever, and these are the things that I care about and work on, and thanks for what you do, or here's where I'd like you to do things differently, right?
Kind of get in your ear,
it's Wyoming has something comparable, but most states do not. And I think what we're fortunate that A, the delegates support this, and B, we have these smaller populations in Wyoming and Montana that gives us better access to our congressional representatives.
Nice.
Pretty good coffee, pretty good donuts, or just mediocre?
I'd say mediocre.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I try to stay away from the donuts, live a healthy life, but it's hard to resist on a Wednesday morning.
Absolutely.
You
don't look like a donut guy.
I may look forward to a better cup of coffee before or after, it's a pretty cool opportunity with the FaceTime.
It's not what you're there for.
Yeah,
lobbying sounds a lot like pharmaceutical sales to me, just in a way. Like what you were saying, you were like, I might just meet with a staff member, and then occasionally I might get 15 minutes with, a congressman or whomever. I was like, God, that sounds so much like sales.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm out of it now, teaching.
It is, right? It's sales.
It is sales. I would say conservation is sales. Yeah, there's a element of developing your elevator speech, doing your research so you really know the details of the issue, and being able to respond, because not everybody's gonna be on your side, and
helps when you believe in it, though.
Part of it does, and part of my job and others in conservation is to win over either the naysayers or those who are on the fence on their issues. So it's important to be prepared.
So politics are super crazy right now, as we all know in this country. You're finding ways to get things done, which we love. Like Eric announced at Wildlands, this has been a good time for Montana to realize that we can have both parties work together to, find something that we both love. Hopefully that can continue. Is there something else that we can look forward to happening right now politically, like indigenous relations, climate, anything like that we can, that you guys have like
in the works?
In the works.
Or where you feel like there can be
Be some stuff,
right, and
stuff
progress in a time where everybody else is getting twisted around the axle of cultural divides and these hot button topics.
I'll respond to this in a few ways. First, I would say that what I've seen since the beginning of 2025 is that our Montana delegation is more cohesive and works well together. That's really important. Mm-hmm. And, we no longer have a quote unquote bipartisan delegation. We're not in a purple state technically. We're in a red state, but the people who are representing us work well together. And I saw that at the Montana Coffee because you see them all in the room together and all their staff in the room together. And, there's things that you can just feel in a space, right? It's like you feel people getting along or like enjoying each other's company. Yeah. And you can also be in a space where you feel tension in the air. Yeah. And I would say that in 2024, there was a lot of tension in the air at the Montana Coffee. And, there was a big Senate election happening. And then even on the House side, there was not everybody got along. And it wasn't just between Democrats and Republicans. That's changed, and I think it puts us in a better position to get things done. And I feel optimistic about that. Now, speaking on the behalf of Greater Yellowstone Coalition, we have a big launch that just happened to talk about the future of the Gallatin Range and the Madison Range in the backyard, the Greater Yellowstone Recreation and Conservation Act, also known as GYREAT. Oh. And that basically is a bill, a draft legislation at this point that would include designated wilderness with over 100,000 acres of wilderness between the Gallatin and Madison ranges, and then some special management conservation areas on the periphery. We're really excited about it. It has a lot of support, and certainly we will be working hard to get a bill sponsor for that, both on the Senate and the House side. You brought up indigenous issues, and Greater Yellowstone Coalition has a tribal priority. We have 3 staff on the Wind River Indian Reservation. They're indigenous staff from the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribes. And one of the things that we've been working for many years is this land repatriation effort. So basically, roughly 100,000 acres within the boundary of the Wind River Indian Reservation were taken by the Bureau of Reclamation for a big federal project back in the early 1900s. At some point, and it was an irrigation project, at some point they realized that, I should say there was like 500,000 acres, and at some point they realized that roughly 100,000 acres weren't being used for the purpose of the property. And so it was an opportunity to return that land, or repatriate that land to the 2 tribes so that they can use it for what they need. Yeah. We've been working on that issue for a while, and I am hopeful that there's some space in this administration to finalize that. It's complicated, but it really speaks to tribal sovereignty and honoring treaty rights, and it's the right thing to do. So and it's conservation and culturally related.
I've got one more question before we get to the game.
I'm sorry.
And that is, conservation should be a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue. We should be doing it faster so that we can catch up to the pace of development, the pace of people being born in this country, people coming to this country. What can we do to take conservation mainstream?
Well, that's a great question, and maybe a $1 million question for a lot of conservation organizations that are interested in that. we need to do a better job of connecting with people. I think national parks are a place to start with it because they already have that national attention. Yellowstone being in our back door is a big one, and I think that really brings a lot of support to the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, between Yellowstone National Park and Grand Teton National Park being the core of the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem. In a lot of ways, I feel like we got to make conservation cool. It can't be like this wonky thing that lobbyists do, right, in DC. Like, that's not that interesting.
Right. So teaching younger people about conservation.
That's a
Perhaps
place
have
to start.
Initiative in the schools. Hey, listen, I can work on that.
Yeah, that's a place to start. And I think I can imagine.
Who's cool? You need Sabrina Carpenter.
What? Yeah, like who are the all-stars, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, well, Dave Matthews was one last
Right.
weekend, right, at Wildlands, and
He made it cool.
he made it cool, right? I mean, I think like Lord Huron did a couple of years ago, right? But we actually, I mean, we need those kinds of figureheads. We need those kinds of icons who represent, in a way, the importance of everything that you just talked about. Because I mean, I would just say amen to all that, right? Like, yeah, we need to protect more wild nature. It's that simple. Wild rivers, wild lands, clean air, clean water, and the vast majority of Americans are all about it. And it's just moving from that to actually seeing it done on the ground that's really laborious, challenging, and takes a really long time.
Is this a bad time to bring up that my neighbor thinks we're ruled by overlords?
We're not going to talk about
All right,
the
fine.
conspiracy theories. It can't be all.
Yeah, and you have those too.
I was like, then they're the people we'll
Yeah.
never convince.
Right.
It can't be all Bill Gates, though. Bill Gates is not cool enough to pull it off.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so
Okay, we're doing a
speaking
game.
of cool, we're going to play. No, you don't get to look at it.
Oh.
Sorry. This is a game. Thank you
game.
for being here,
All
Charles,
right.
and answering all my
I
questions.
didn't sign
now.
up for a game.
I
For
have
the
no
record.
idea what this is. It's always a surprise.
This game is called It's That Woo Woo.
It's that woo woo.
It's a bub rub reference.
It's a term that
for
Joe
those who
uses
are
with
not
me a
Oh
lot.
boy.
internet literate. Charles Wolf Drimal. Wolf is your real middle name. You practice Zazen, and you perform indie folk music under the moniker Raven Roshi.
Correct.
All right. Michelle here fancies herself a Wiccan, and she sleeps.
I'm not Wiccan.
She sleeps on a grounding sheet.
I do.
You're both pretty freaking woo-woo. All right. But let's find out who is more woo.
Not
between
Wiccan.
the two of
I have
you.
some Wicca tendencies.
So please answer these questions honestly. And
Are we both answering, or
Yes,
just
I
me?
want you
Yeah.
both to answer.
He always
Okay.
makes us.
Do you know?
play the game.
Do you know
No.
about this? Okay.
Nope.
Have you?
There's a game at the end of every podcast, and he makes me participate, but I don't know what the game's going to be.
I love your hat, by the way. I love
Thank
the
you.
feather in your hat. None of this is to
This is
make
That
fun
incorporates
of either of you.
part of your stake, the persona.
Let's start with this. Have you ever saged a room? I know the answer for this one.
No,
You've never
but I've
saged a room.
been in a room that has been saged.
Okay.
Oh, you have
Michelle
people sage
definitely
it for
has
you.
saged a room.
Many a room.
Do you speak to non-living things, the water, the moon, anything like that?
I do.
I practice gratitude. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it talk back?
You want to answer first, or I can? It's up to
Go
you.
ahead, Michelle.
I think so, not in a verbal way, but like, when we lived near the ocean, every morning I'd run down to the ocean. I'd put my hands into the ocean. I'd thank it for existing. Thank you,
Right.
Mother Ocean. You're amazing. And I imagine like it's waves coming at me, or it's gratitude. Like, yeah, I love you back, sister.
Okay.
It's that woo woo.
So
Yeah,
in a way
things like
it
that.
talks. It doesn't
A way.
speak in English. Does
I haven't heard English either.
Okay.
I would say it's more of a feeling,
Yeah.
the way the wind picks up after a prayer of gratitude, or how a red-tailed hawk flies by and gives you a signal. Yeah, but I haven't heard any English language.
Nor have I.
all right?
Let's just be clear.
Do you believe crystals possess healing qualities?
I don't have an answer to that. That's beyond my knowledge and understanding. Yeah, I'm not tapped into that.
Yeah, I would like to hope that they do.
Okay.
Which is why I have them. I don't think
Yes.
I've been setting anything outside by the light of the moon lately. But I do think there's something to crystals and rocks and all of that because they are ancient. They have been here way longer than we have, and they have knowledge of, like, you know, dinosaurs, things that have been here forever.
It's that woo woo.
So I do think they're
Pretty
sacred.
woo-woo.
I'm glad
think they're
Michelle is
sacred.
on the podcast because she's way more articulate than my response, which is like,
Do you own crystals?
we have some in our house.
You do. How
yeah.
many?
I don't know.
Do you have, like, one of those big crystals?
I mean, some of them have been inherited from my mother-in-law, so I
Okay.
couldn't count them.
Heirloom crystals.
Heirloom.
Does your
crystals.
wife believe that crystals have healing powers?
Well, I think they wouldn't be in our space if
Yeah.
there wasn't some sentiment.
If they were
there.
just
Got
rocks.
Got
Yeah,
it.
they're not just
Got it.
rocks.
Okay. I'm gonna- You guys tie on that one. I'm going to say, do you believe water has memory?
Ooh. There's actually scientific literature about this. There's a Japanese scientist whose last name is Emoto, and he studied water molecules in relationship to people's expressions, words that they're saying, whether they're like kind, gentle, or harsh. And
They wrote words.
the water molecules change their shape in response to all of this. So it's a different form of intelligence than we may understand, but it does seem like there's intelligence.
Okay. This is not woo-woo.
No, it's
This is
scientific.
Science.
Yeah. I'm glad you remember that person's
Science
name
teacher
because
here.
as soon
Yeah.
as he said
Yeah.
that, I was like, yes, because they had, I think it was 3 or 4 different containers of water with, like, I think hate was written on something. And then they had joy or gratitude or things like that. And it was how people responded to those words around that water. The molecules changed within. It was all the same water, exactly the same time, put in same containers. They made sure it was a control, situation. But yeah.
Think about this. We're about 75% water.
Yeah.
So imagine how your mind and intentions affect the energy of your body and the movement of water in your body.
All
God,
that
I gotta
water
stop
inside
worrying.
my body.
I-
gotta be,
Yeah,
got
you
to
got to
stop
start
worrying.
worrying.
you got to be good to the
Go
water.
be
in
grateful.
Your body.
Yes.
If an animal acted like it wanted you to follow it, would you?
What is the animal?
Depends on the animal,
Yeah.
right? If a grizzly was like, I would probably say no, thank you. Or
Yeah.
a mountain lion, I'd be like, you know what, love
But
you.
if it's a dog or a cat, a rabbit, something that
Oh, 1,000%.
that's
I
not
would go
going to
on
hurt
a
you.
Sure.
walkabout
Okay,
with
sure.
one of those
You're
things.
definitely following that animal. All right.
Context specific.
Yeah, with or without my clothes on. I don't know.
It's that woo woo.
Can you read my aura?
Michelle.
No, I can't.
You cannot read my aura.
No, but can you? Can you read people's eyes?
No, I can't read your aura, but I would say like I can read the way you are right now. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I can
Picking
see
up on
your body language.
That's
yeah.
different.
Yes.
That's different.
If I, within the first couple of seconds of meeting someone, you know this. Like Joe says I suss out crazy really fast. And I do really fast. I'm just like, no,
I'm still sitting here, right? You guys didn't reject me.
good. Yes, you're fabulous. But no. A lot of times I think that you just sense something about people and maybe that's an aura. But no, I don't like say, ooh, hers is purple and I
Okay.
thought.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm feeling like you guys are about the same level of woo-woo, honestly.
Sweet.
So
We'll
I
follow
do
a
need
rabbit
this
later.
final tiebreaker question. Please recount to me your most woo-woo experience when the universe was in complete alignment and every vibration shared the same wavelength. Tell me about that moment.
I don't know. I mean, like the ocean thing. Remember, I've told you sometimes when there was, especially one morning, I went out and it was sunrise, and I put my hands in the sand, and I was like, "Thank you," because every morning it was like, "Thank you," and I was so excited to like see the water because it's just vast, and that's why I love Montana, all the vast. But like, I put my hands in it, and it was gratitude, and the waves got a little bigger, and I'm sure nature, whatever. Waves got a little bigger, and then like 3 dolphins jumped out of the water, like in that moment, and I was just like, yes. Like, this is Earth.
It's that woo woo.
All
This is
right.
good.
That's pretty woo-woo.
Pretty woo-woo.
Pressure's on.
3
Can I break the
dolphins.
tie?
Charles.
How do I break the tie with this story?
I was shocked when it was like 2, and then the third one was like, you know what? I'm kind of. Anyway.
Charles Wolf Drimal. You're up.
What do I got? I think there's an element of entering the flow state that connects us with the world in a way that's like non-discursive and spiritual. And for me, most of the experiences that I've had in the flow state have been induced from being in wild nature, often some kind of exercise or movement involved.
I thought you were saying mushrooms or licking a toad. I'm glad you said
well,
the other part.
we could go there too. But I was gonna talk about the clean path.
It's probably better. Yeah.
It's all natural.
So
Yeah,
like skiing, like an epic line in the Selkirks in Canada that was like amazing. Probably like 8% content powder that was just like felt like I was in a wave, and my body was moving and doing all the right things, and my mind was like perfectly centered, almost like experiencing it from not necessarily outside, but like all encompassing of body, mind, place, and this continuous movement. I got into surfing in my 30s, which is a late time to start surfing, but I fell in love with it. And once I started catching waves, I've had some of those moments where it's just like perfect flow and unity with the experience and the place, and also the maybe afterwards or before being in that state, just the deep gratitude and appreciation and awe for the vastness of the ocean, being connected to the ocean, having sea turtles, sorry, not dolphins, but we had sea turtles.
Sea turtles are my favorite.
Sea turtles are amazing.
Turtles,
so having sea turtles, they're with me, just like cruising around. And then I'll just point to another experience. In my 20s, I was a wilderness guide and educator for the National Outdoor Leadership School, and I worked up in Alaska quite a bit, mountaineering, and it just brought me to some massively expansive landscapes with glaciers and huge alpine peaks, and I got to climb some of those peaks, many of them unnamed, with students in tow and teaching them mountaineering. And then up in Alaska, you have these nights where the sun like never sets, or if it sets, you still have light all night long. And so you can be in a snow camp at 11 o'clock at night, and there's just pink all the way around from that sunset and doesn't go away. And it just, there's this like the sense of humility, right? Like we're so small on this planet, and everything is perfect and complete, lacking nothing in that experience. And I think that's part of the flow state. It's like I don't need anything else. Like everything is just as it should be right in this moment. So
full of happy.
How's that
body
for
water.
woo?
That's woo woo.
It's that woo woo.
Yes, I get that on trail runs a lot of times.
You are both.
Trail running. You're
It's
just like
that woo woo.
Yes, weird. So the woo woo, but it's a good thing. I think more of us should all be, that way.
Thank you for your patience.
For the
with
record,
that
Wolf is a
game.
nickname. It's not my middle name.
It is not your Christian.
It's not my
name.
Christian born name. But
Got it.
my buddies in high school started calling me that, and for my wild antics, and it stuck all these years. And
I'm sorry.
I
that's
go
a,
by
that's
Charles.
A point deduction for
Charles
the woo-woo
Professional. I know. It's like, should I have revealed that? Like, how does that put
I
me
like it.
up to Michelle? But
No.
just
My middle name's Fraser, so yeah, I don't think I have anything.
My middle
exciting.
nickname is Spoons. If you look me up on IMDb,
All right.
I'm under there as Joe Spoons
Nickname.
Borden. Yeah.
Where does spoons come from?
That's
Multiple
It was
Joes.
one of the movies I worked on. I was not the first Joe to be hired. The production office coordinator was named Joe Janier, and so they started giving me nicknames, and they were all awful. And so I said, no, just call me Spoons. That was my college nickname. And they go, oh, I love that. So they all called me Spoons.
It wasn't his college
which I just
nickname.
made up on the
Yeah.
spot. I just didn't want to be like Bama Joey or whatever stupid name they were trying to give me. So Spoon stuck. That's how I was credited on that movie.
Really?
And now I am credited that way on IMDb.
Nice.
That's my life. Charles, thank you so much.
Thanks for having
joining
me.
us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for taking interest in this Wild and Scenic Rivers Act.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best of
High
luck
five
with
a
the
sea turtle
great
for me.
bill.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll check back in.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you spent a bunch of time.